is Shahab Anari, and I'm super thrilled and excited and honored to be your host tonight. So I'm taking over from the legendary Julian Humphreys, who used to host our ICF Toronto meetings for quite a while, and he did a fantastic job. But I joined the ICF Toronto chapter on the board, and I'll be your new monthly member meeting director from now on. I'm a part of the programming community, and alongside my fellow board member, Rosemary Fernandez, and the other wonderful board members, we have put together an amazing program for you guys so that we can have an even more thriving chapter. How does that sound? So just so you know, I'm the face here, but a lot of work has gone into the programming, into planning for the chapter, and I never take credit for it because, you know, all the wonderful people on the board have spent hours and hours and, you know, dedicated a lot of volunteer time to make this happen. So I suggest you show some love to my fellow board members who have, especially our leader, Barb Rosenschreiber, who has led us through these unprecedented times. Okay, it's great to have everyone here. Let me share my screen. Okay, awesome. So here's today's agenda. So we have the opening remarks. I'm gonna make a couple of announcements, and then the bulk of our session will be Mark Black's presentation. Mark Black, professional speaker. I'm going to be introducing him in a little bit, and he will give an amazing presentation on the topic of roadmap to resilience. Isn't that timely? He has been kind enough to work with me through this agenda. He will be delivering his presentation in two parts. When he's done with the first part, we will do a bit of networking, and I'm going to tell you about the networking in a little bit, and then Mark will take over and will give the second part of his presentation. And at the end of today's session, we'll have the closing remarks, a couple of final announcements, and hopefully we'll be done by 8 p.m. EST. Okay, awesome. Since I'm your new host for the ICF Toronto monthly member meetings, you might want to know me a little bit more. So I thought I will create a quiz for you guys. So here's how it works. So in a second, I'll show you 5 statements about me, Shahab Anari, yours truly. And I'm going to be asking you, what do you think? Which one of these 5 statements are true about me? Maybe one of them, maybe all of them. You can guess. Obviously, you don't know, but you can take a guess. And the way it works is that I would love for you guys to hop on the chat box and put your answers in the chat box so that everyone can see. And right now, do something for me, please. Be kind enough to go to the chat box. Right next to the chat space, there are 3 dots. If you click on the 3 dots, do it right now. Please do it right now. Go to the chat box, click on the 3 dots and pick all panelists and attendees so that when you put in your answer there, everyone else can see it, okay? Pick all panelists and attendees. Okay, great. Okay, here you go. Are you ready? So I'm gonna be showing you 5 statements. What do you think? Which one is true about Shahab Anari? It's a game, right? Don't take it too seriously. It's a game. Shahab plays the violin. He originally trained as a medical doctor. He has written 26 books. He has lived in 4 countries. And he's a personal branding consultant. So what do you think? I'd love to know. So put it in the chat box. What do you think? $30 seconds. So which one is true? It's a game of guessing, right? Let me stop share here. Okay, so tons of comments. Maybe one of them is true, maybe all of them is true, right? So all of the statements, all of the above, lived in 4 countries. Okay. Thank you for participating in the guesswork. Okay, awesome. Let me tell you what are the correct answers. Number 1, plays the violin. No, it's not true. I don't play the violin. I would have loved to, but I don't. Originally trained as a medical doctor. Yes, your new host, your new monthly member meeting director, originally trained as a medical doctor. I entered med school 20-something years ago. I graduated as a medical doctor, but I didn't do a specialization because that wasn't my passion, that wasn't my genius, and I pivoted into training, teaching, consulting. I've been a trainer slash consultant for 20 years, I would say, but I've been a properly trained professional coach since 2015. Number 3, he has written 26 books. That's actually true, but 22 of my books are in Farsi. I'm originally from Iran, so 22 of them are in Farsi. I've sold a lot of them, and 4 of them are in English. And if you Google them, if you Google my name, if you go on Amazon, you can find my books. So that's true, number 3. Number 4, he has lived in 4 different countries. No, that's not true. I haven't lived in 4 different countries. I've lived in only 3 different countries. So I was born in Iran, then I moved to the Netherlands, and then my family, we all moved to Canada. So I've lived in 3 different countries, 3 different continents, not 4. And number 5, he's a personal branding consultant. That's true. I'm at the office right now. You can see all these words behind me. That was an easy one to guess. Yes, my company is called North Star Success, and we are a personal branding agency. So just wanted to share in a fun way who I am and what I do and what's my background. So an important thing to consider here is that, as you can see, I have an accent. I was not born in Canada, but I'm on the board and I'm here, your host today. So what does that mean? That means that diversity and inclusion is alive and kicking in ICF Toronto chapter, right? Right? Is that right? Do you agree? So just sharing with you guys that if you're a new coach, if you're a seasoned coach, if you were born in Canada, if you're an immigrant, if you come from a different background, it doesn't matter. We would love to have you as a board member, as a volunteer, as somebody who wants to get involved in the ICF Toronto chapter, right? And that's my main message here for you guys today. Awesome. So just so you know, my 2 reasons for joining ICF Toronto chapter, number 1 was that I wanted to help strengthen the community, the concept of community among professional coaches in Toronto. And honestly, 4 or 5 years ago when I first joined ICF Toronto, I felt disconnected. I attended the sessions, I listened to the wonderful speakers, I knew maybe a handful of people. I sat beside those people, I talked to them, but I didn't feel attached. I didn't feel connected to the chapter. And one of the reasons why I decided to join the board was that I wanted to change this. I wanted to influence this in a positive way. And I wanted to help make it happen. And this is one of my main initiatives. I've shared it with the board. I've got the approval of our leader, Barb. And this is what I'm going to be focusing on as one of your board members. So helping to strengthen the community. That's one thing for me. And number 2 is that I would really love to help improve the programming. That was one of my main reasons too, because the programming has been amazing, but I believe its main focus has been more on core competencies, on developing pure coaching skills. I wanted to, emphasize the business building aspect as well. And by that I mean, we all know that I personally believe that coaching is amazing. We all believe in that, right? Coaching changes lives. But the thing is, a lot of coaches are struggling to have a successful business. They can't get enough clients. And if they can't get enough clients, and if they don't have a successful business, they can't make the impact that they have always wanted to make. So as important as developing our core competencies, I personally believe it's important to learn how to grow our business as coaches so that we can impact more people. As easy as that, as simple as that. So that was my second reason. And by the way, just so you know, somebody put my name forward in 2018. I got rejected in the election process, but again, I got nominated last year, and thankfully, I got elected and I'm here. So these are my two main initiatives as a board member, and I'll be focusing on these two main initiatives so that we can have a thriving community of coaches in Toronto. We can get to know each other better. We can support each other, and at the same time have a better, bigger, more thriving business. So what do you think? Just put one word in the chat box so that I know what you think. Do you like my initiatives? Do you think it makes sense or no? Awesome, awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna stop share here. Just okay. Thank you, Lisa, Jermaine, Jim, Elisha, if I'm not mispronouncing your name, Jane, Marianne, Floyd, Marenka, Virginia, Nancy. Thank you so much. I love you guys. I love you guys. Thank you. Let's go, Brenda. Let's go. Awesome. Rachel, thank you so much. Cindy, awesome. Okay. So I don't want to just talk. I want to walk the talk. So one of the initiatives that we have approved on the board is a new initiative called Member Wisdom Series. What does that mean? Just listen up. So I want everyone, all of our members of ICF Toronto, I want you guys to be seen and heard. I want you guys to be visible. I want all of us to get to know each other more, not be strangers, not just be a member of an association. Be like friends, be supportive people, be supportive members of the same group. So member wisdom is very simple. I want to invite all of you, especially those of you who are more experienced, PCCs, MCCs, I really encourage all of you guys to join this initiative. It's very easy to get involved. What does it mean in Member Wisdom Series? So I invite all of you to create a video in your area of expertise, 5 minutes or less, that will benefit other members, right? It can be something about how to build your business. It can be something about core competencies. It can be some experience that you want to share. The only criteria is that a video, 5 minutes or less, and it has to benefit the other members, right? It has to be beneficial to the other members. And if you send a link to that video, not the whole video, I don't want you to attach it to your email, a link to that video on your YouTube, maybe on Vimeo, maybe somewhere else, on Dropbox, send it to my email, shahab@icftoronto.com. Just write this email address down, shahab@icftoronto.com. I'll make sure, with the help of the amazing volunteers on my team, we will go through these videos, and we will make sure that once a month, we will share these videos, at least one of them or two of them, with you guys, with all the membership, so that we can all get to know each other, so that we can all feel that we're heard, we're seen by the other members. So that's one initiative. I encourage all of you guys to join us, especially the more experienced coaches. That's number one. And number two is that in almost 30 minutes, I'm going to be asking for volunteers, 3 volunteers. And what do I want from them? I would love 3 of you to raise your hands in 30 minutes, and I'll grant you permission to start your video and audio. I will bring you live so that everyone can see you in all of your glory, and you will have 1 minute to introduce yourselves. 3 of you volunteer. I won't force you to do it. You can volunteer. 3 of you, you will come on live and with your video and audio on, if you want to get changed, if you want to dress up, you still have time, 30 minutes. And 3 of you will come on live and will introduce yourself in 1 minute, who you are, what you do, who you serve, why are you awesome, right? Because we want you to be seen and heard. We need to get to know each other. And when we get to know each other, we will like each other and we will trust each other and we will refer business to each other and we will support each other, right? It's simple as that. So 3 volunteers. If you're game, get ready in 30 minutes, okay? Awesome. I'm gonna ask for those 3 volunteers in 30 minutes. Wonderful, okay. Without further ado, I wanna introduce our amazing, wonderful speaker, Mark Black, CSP. Mark is here. Mark, could you raise your hand so that I can find you? We have more than 100 people online. That's amazing. Thank you for being here, every one of you. I really appreciate it. Okay. Mark. Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to read Mark's bio and then I'll hand the mic over to Mark. So Mark Black is a heart and double lung transplant recipient. Hi, Mark, how are you? Okay, I'm going to read your bio first. Mark Black is a heart and double lung transplant recipient turned 4-time marathon runner. A resilience expert, coach, and author, Mark helps people thrive in challenging times. His programs provide the tools to transform your adversity into your advantage. Mark doesn't just teach resilience, he embodies it. Born with a life-threatening heart defect, Mark underwent 2 open heart surgeries before the age of 1. He battled his condition and its limitations for 22 years until he was forced to deal with the biggest obstacle of his young life. His doctor informed him that his heart was failing, and without a rare and dangerous heart and double lung transplant, he would not see his 25th birthday. In 2002, Mark was fortunate that a suitable donor was found. He not only survived the surgery, but less than 3 years later, Mark became the only man in history to run a marathon with someone else's heart and lungs. That's unbelievable. Mark is now a certified speaking professional, CSP, a designation held by less than 1,000 speakers in the world. He has inspired more than 150,000 people in more than 450 presentations and has worked with global brands including ExxonMobil and Mercedes-Benz, as well as many national and regional associations. Mark lives in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, where he spends as much time as possible with the most important people in his life, his wife and their 3 children. Mark, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. How's everybody? I hope everybody is good. I am going to share my screen here so that I can bring up some slides for us.
So before I hand it over to Mark, I just want you guys to know that a CSP is a designation that less than, I think, 7% of professional speakers worldwide have. And I'm really thankful, and we all are really thankful to you, Mark, for volunteering your time and being with us tonight, this evening on this webinar. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right.
Take it away, Mark.
Let's see if we can get this to work. There we go. All right. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. And hopefully what I can share with you today is going to be helpful not only to your...
Mark, your volume is a bit low.
Okay.
Yeah, that's much better. When you get closer to the mic, it's much better.
Just turn that up. There we go. That's a little better.
There you go. Thank you so much.
All right. No, thank you. So hopefully what I'm going to share with you today is helpful not only to your business, but also to your life. And we're going to talk about some resilient strategies that some of you may already be aware of, But this is a framework that I've constructed over a period of years, basically reverse engineering what I and my family did as we survived um, being listed for transplant, waiting for the transplant, surviving the surgery, etc. And so, because that's the kind of origin story um, of the framework, I wanted to share some of the story with you as well. And so, as we progress here, I'll share bits and pieces of the story along the way, so that you get a bit of context for the framework that we're going to share. I see a couple people. I see your comments there that you're having a hard time. Let me make sure that. There we go. I think I had my
It's
monitor
much
up too
better.
loud.
It's
There
much
we go.
better. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I want to share a little bit of the framework with you so that you understand, or a little bit of the story with you rather, so you have the context for the framework. So to begin, I want to ask you to think about uh, a specific scenario. I want you to imagine, if you can, what it would be like sitting in a hospital waiting room. We've all probably been in a room like that at some point in our life. And you've been in the hospital now for about 4 weeks, but it's been about 3 or 4 months since you last felt like yourself. Over the last week, you've been an inpatient and doctors have run numerous tests. And in a few minutes, the doctor is going to come through the door and give you the results of the testing. Imagine how you feel. Imagine the emotions, imagine the nerves, imagine the thought patterns as you try to prepare yourself for what's about to happen, not knowing what exactly that will be. The doctor walks through the door, and as soon as you see his face, you know it's not good news. He walks in, he sits down across from you. He has a thick folder with test results in his hands. He looks you in the eye and, in one sentence, transforms your entire life. You need a heart and 2 new lungs, and you need them yesterday. And in an instant, everything in your life changes. What do you do? How do you react? What would you do first? What would you be feeling? After processing this news, you manage to express a couple of questions to seek some clarification about what's going on. And the doctor informs you that the only chance you have to survive is to get a heart and lung transplant. You say, well, what happens if I don't? And he says, it's hard to give you an exact number, but if I had to guess, I would say you have 12 to 18 months to live. At the time that you're sitting there, you are 24 years old. Shocking, right? Your life is turned upside down in a matter of moments. Most of us have been experiencing a version of this similar experience over the last few months, haven't we? As our lives and our businesses have been turned upside down. And what happened over the next year of my life after that news forms the basis of what I'm going to share with you today. 4 strategies, tools that I believe we can all use today and every day in our lives and in our business to help us to build resilience. Now, why resilience? Well, resilience is critical because most of us strive in our lives, and our whole kind of culture actually is built around the idea of trying to make things easier. Right? If you think about how our world works, we're always trying to make things more convenient. We're trying to make things easier for ourselves. And when we do that, we lose our ability to overcome adversity and to thrive in challenge and to adapt and change in constructive ways. And one of the fundamental philosophies that I've made a part of my life and in my business is that I believe it's supposed to be hard. I believe being a great parent, being a great spouse, being a great partner, being a great coach is hard, but it's supposed to be. That's what makes it valuable. That's what makes it rewarding. That's part of why you do it. And so I can demonstrate this to you very quickly. I want you to think about something in your life. Maybe it's a moment, maybe it's an achievement, a moment in your life that you are really proud of. And do me a favor, just go in the chat box and just type whatever words come to mind. Whether it might have been graduation, it might have been a time with family, it might have been your certification as a coach, something else, I don't know. Start to type those in there and I'll start to read some of them as I see them go by. Getting pilot's license, doctoral degree, cycling across Canada, wow. Driving across Canada in my MGB, nice. Climbing Kilimanjaro, starting a business, PCC, love it. I love all these. I'm seeing tons and tons of accomplishments. Fantastic, I love it. And keep going. I'm gonna keep reading those as we keep going here. But so my question to you then, the follow-up question is, whatever that thing was for you, was it easy or was it difficult? I promise you, without having the chance to have met any of you personally, without having a chance to have a conversation about this particular moment in your life, I can guarantee that it wasn't easy, because we are not proud of the things that are easy, are we? Right? We don't brag about the things that we find simple to do. We are proud of the things that we struggle to do. We are proud of the things that were difficult to learn, but we figured them out. That's part of what resilience is about. It's about embracing challenge because we know it's going to make us better. And it's also about understanding that resilience is not about bouncing back. It's an analogy that we use a lot. This idea that we have adversity, and so it's kind of, it throws us to the ground, and then we bounce back and we recover. And I had many people give that analogy to me as I recovered from my transplant surgery. But the truth is that every action, every event, every human being we meet, every experience we have changes us, for better or for worse. And so you're not the same person today that you were yesterday, or at least I hope you're not. You're certainly not the same person you were 2 years ago that you are today, and on it goes. And so resilience is not about returning to some past state, because that's not possible. And I hear that language a lot right now, both in the business context and in the personal context of recovery and of getting back to where we were and getting back to normal. But I think we all have already realized that normal as we knew it will probably never exist quite the same way again, and that that's not a bad thing. And so what instead we want to do, instead of bouncing back, is to evolve through, right? How can we grow through the challenges that we face? Creating a new normal. Absolutely. I love it. Yeah, it's about personal growth. It's about that's exactly what you do with your clients, hopefully, right? You do it in different capacities, in different niches, but we want to grow. We want to learn. We're all going to go through a lot of really difficult things in our lives. That's life. The question is, will we grow through them or not? And to do that, we have to be intentional. So the first question I want to ask you today about your business is, if you can, whoops, I'm going to go backwards for a second. I'd like you to describe your coaching practice as it stands today in one word, what one word comes to mind first. If you're talking to somebody, maybe it's a colleague or a friend who you have comfort with and confidence in, what would you say about your coaching practice? Some people are saying new, some are saying drowning, recreating, stalled, busy, kaleidoscope, creative, adventurous, on hold, transitioning, transforming, generous, evolving. Okay, love it. All these are all great, and keep them going, because your colleagues who are watching can read the chat at the same time. What I want to help you think about today is to reframe it. If right now in your mind you feel stuck, you feel like you're drowning, as someone said, you feel like you're on hold, all of those completely normal feelings, obviously. But what I want us to think about is instead, can we evolve? Can we grow? Can we adjust? Can we change? Yes, it's challenging. No, it's not the same as it was. Revenue may be way down. Clients may be down. Completely normal. But can we see this as an opportunity to learn a new skill, find a new way to market, re-engineer our business? So right now, for example, I'm delivering a presentation to you, standing up in my home office with cameras and lights. None of this was here 3 months ago. 90% of my business and my revenue is speaking on stages, typically at large events, regional and national conferences all over North America. So at about end of February, beginning of March, well, actually it was the beginning of March. We went away on holidays, and I came back at the end of the first week of March, and my entire calendar for the year 2020 disappeared in the span of 3 days. In 3 days, call after call, email after email, clients either postponing or canceling every single event on my calendar. What do? Ouch is right. Many of you experienced some percentage of that depending on your model. Some of you maybe haven't been touched at all. Maybe some of you even got busier. Point is, things changed. And the question is, well, how do we deal with that? How do we cope with that? Well, that's part of what we're going to talk about today. And again, I'm going to use my health story as a framework for that, but I hope you're able to draw the connections, to connect the dots between that story and your story. And we're going to try and do that as we progress here. So I'm going to give you 4 strategies that you can use. As you go through that, this is a tool that you can use. And so what I would encourage you to do, you can either do the opt-in right now or just screenshot this slide. I can also send it to you later. What this is a very simple assessment tool. Think of it like a quiz, okay? And so it's just a 2-page PDF. The first page gives you a series of questions that you self-evaluate. And then the second page gives you the answer keys so that you can find out kind of where you sit right now. And what I would invite you to do is to take it, apply the things that we're going to talk about today, and then retake it again in a month, or, well, a month would be good. And then take it again in 90 days and see your progress. Because if you apply what we talk about today, you will see improvement and progress. Okay, so if you haven't grabbed that number and word, just screenshot that so that you don't miss it. We're gonna move on to the next slide, and I don't want you to miss it. And if anybody does, by the way, we can email it to you later. So the first step in this process, and it's absolutely critical, is that we have to learn to accept what is before we can do anything else. Right? Whenever we're faced with a new challenging situation, the first thing we have to do is to accept it. Now, that may sound incredibly obvious and very easy. And in some cases, it is. But in cases of major challenge and change, it's incredibly difficult, isn't it? How many of us have been through something in our lives that we did not want to face? If you've had that situation, just give me a yes in the chat box so that I know that I'm not the only one. Imagine again sitting in this hospital room and you learn this lesson. I would love to tell you, as I was told that I had a year left to live, that I just instantly accepted. I say yes, 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 yes. That I instantly just said, okay, what do we do? But I didn't. I was angry. I was frustrated. I spent weeks and weeks and weeks in a self-pity, woe is me mindset. After being sent home, so initially I was in Halifax where I was evaluated. Then they sent me to Toronto because that is the only place, or one of the only places where they did heart-lung transplants at that time. In fact, at the time that my surgery was done, they had not done a single heart-lung transplant in the entire country that year. The year that I had mine, I was one of a couple. And so in order to be listed for the transplant, I had to move to the closest center that did the surgery, and that was in Toronto. I live in Moncton, New Brunswick. It's about a 1,400 kilometer or 1,000 miles for our American friends. And because lungs are incredibly fragile, at that time, they lasted about 6 hours between the donor and the recipient. It meant that we had to move because you had to be on site. They would not put you on the list unless you were within a 2-hour drive of the hospital at all times. They gave me a pager, a beeper. This is where I have to stop if I'm speaking to people under the age of 20 and explain to them what that is. So if you're under 20, it's like this little box, kind of like a one-way cell phone is how I like to explain it. And when somebody would call you, the number would appear on a screen, and then you would go and find a payphone. Remember those? Or maybe you had a cell phone, and you would call the number back. So they give you this pager, and they say, when we find a suitable donor for you, come in and have your transplant. They made it sound very easy. Like many things in life, they seem straightforward, but in actuality, they're actually pretty complex. And so I take this pager back to where I'm staying at my great aunt's house in Toronto, who was incredibly generous and allowed us to stay with her while we waited for the transplant. And for the first couple of weeks, every time the microwave beeps, every time the phone rings, you jump, right? Is this the call? Is this the call? But the weeks go by and no phone call. After several months of waiting, my condition is deteriorating daily. Doctors explain that I need to come into the hospital for a couple of days so that they can run some tests. And we, of course, do that. And then they explain that the test results show that I developed a new problem, something called ventricular tachycardia. And Shahab probably knows what that means, but for those of you who are not familiar with the lingo or the jargon, simply means the bottom 2 chambers, the ventricles of the heart, would spontaneously race out of control. So if you can imagine sitting like you're sitting right now, and all of a sudden feeling as though you've just sprinted up a hill. You're out of breath, your heart is pounding. Now, if you're short of breath and your heart is pounding because you've just worked out really hard, that's actually a good sign. That's what your heart is supposed to do. But when it does it for no reason without prompting, it's a sign that something is wrong. And the doctor explained that I was now at very high risk for sudden cardiac death. So in other words, the heart goes really, really fast and then it stops. And he said, look, there's really nothing we can do to fix this. The only thing we can do is keep you in the hospital on 24-hour surveillance so that if something happens, we can react quickly. Basically, if your heart stops, we can come in and defibrillate you and hopefully bring you back to life. How do you accept that? I would love to say that I had the answer that day. I didn't. It took me weeks. And after sitting in that hospital room, angry at the world for weeks and weeks and weeks, my mom came in and coached me, really. I'm sure that's not what she would call it, but that's what she did. She sat down beside me and she just asked me a great question. She said, Mark, I understand that you're angry, you're entitled, I get it, but how is it working? Where will you be and how will you feel if you keep thinking the way you're thinking and feeling the way you're feeling? Where will you be next week? Where will you be next month? Just think about that. Maybe it would be helpful if you started to focus on the things that were going right instead of the things that were going wrong. If you started to focus on the things you control instead of the things that you don't. Any of you who are parents know that sometimes when you give your adult children advice, they're not really open to receiving it. And so I believe my response to mom's great advice was, whatever, mom. You don't get it. You don't know what it's like. And it took about 3 weeks for her idea to become my idea, which then made it a good one. And it clicked and I understood what she was trying to teach me, which is this first part of this framework. She was trying to teach me acceptance. Right? We all know that in any event that happens in our lives, there's stimulus and response, right? We've learned that in our psychology training. Actually, what happens though is there's stimulus, there's reflex or response, and then there is assigned meaning. And that's where the magic really happens. It's completely human and natural to have that reaction or that reflex of being angry when something goes wrong, right? You stub your toe, you say, "Arr," or something more significant happens, you have that period of grieving. But after that, we then decide, what did that event mean? And it's when we assign that meaning that we determine how that event is going to affect our lives. Do we assign it constructive meaning or destructive meaning? Do we assign it empowering meaning or disempowering meaning? And so a lot of my effort in working with my clients is helping them to shorten that gap. The gap is always going to exist. I don't know anybody, maybe there's a Buddhist monk somewhere who instantly goes to acceptance immediately. But I think human nature being what it is, we all have a gap. The question just is it a matter of seconds or minutes or years? And the more we can work on shortening that gap and accepting more quickly, the better our lives are going to be. Now, let's be really clear. Acceptance doesn't mean we become passive victims. Quite the contrary. The reason we learn to do this is so that we can be more effective at doing the things that we can do. So very quickly, let's take a look at this diagram. You may have seen this before. I call it the time energy spending equation. And so this is an activity you can do on your own afterwards if you'd like. Take a 10 minutes with a blank piece of paper and list all of the things that are stressing you out. All of the things that are on your mind, all the things that are keeping you up at night, all of the things that you're worried about. Just create as big a list as you possibly can. We all have those things. Then I want you to take each of those things and I want you to plot them on this graph by what you have control over. So in the very middle are things that you have complete control over, right? Those are things like what you wear in the morning or what you choose to eat or how you think or any of those things. Then there are things that you have influence over but not control. So those would be in the some category, right? And then finally on the outside, we have things that we have no control over at all. So if you plot each of those things and think about where they fit best, there's a lot of gray area there and a lot of room for interpretation. That's okay. And then say to yourself, where do I spend the majority of my time and energy every day? Am I spending the majority of my time and energy on things that I control completely, on things I have influence over? Or am I spending a lot of my time and energy on things I have no control over at all? And when you do that, most of us have a very eye-opening experience because we recognize that we are spending at least some, if not significant, amounts of our time and energy on things that we have no control over at all. And as I sat in that hospital room, knowing that I could die at any moment because of the heart condition that I had, time became incredibly important. I began to appreciate just how special each and every day is, and just how critical it is for us to use our time effectively. And so then years later, when I drew this graph out and I started to plot where I was spending my time mentally and emotionally, and my energy mentally and emotionally, I got really angry with myself. But it's because I realized how much time and energy I was wasting on things that I could not control at all. And I strove from that day forward to better invest my time and my energy on the things that I control most. Now, this isn't about trying to grasp and hang on to things that we can't control at all. Quite the opposite. It's about helping us to understand where we can't control things so that we can work on letting them go. It always makes me laugh when I hear somebody complain about the weather. Those of you who, like me, live in Atlantic Canada, we live in a part of the world where weather changes incredibly quickly. If you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes is one of the phrases that I like to use for people who have never been here before. You know, we went from snow to plus 30 degrees or like 80s for the American folks here in the span of like 3 weeks here. And yet the number of people who will spend time and energy complaining about the weather is mind-boggling. It's time and energy out of their lives that they will never get back. And I always think our only two finite resources that I'm aware of are time and energy. Like we can get more of just about everything else. You can get more money, you can find more clients, you can get more courses, you can learn more skills, but we all get 24 hours in a day and we all have almost only so much energy to give. And so doesn't it make sense that we invest those resources strategically and intentionally? That's what acceptance is about. Once we have figured out what we control and what we do not and start to let go of what we do not, then we're ready for the next step. So I want you to think about one of the 4 questions I'm going to ask you today is, what do I need to accept? You phrased another way, it might be, what do I need to let go of? If there's something that pops into your mind right now, something that you know, I need to just, this has been bothering me, it's been on my mind, I need to let it go, and you're willing to share it, drop it in the chat box. I'd love to hear what some of you have to say. I'll give you an example. For me, one of the things that I have had to learn to let go of is the idea that things are going to get back to normal quickly. When this first started, I thought, oh, I'll be back on a stage in a couple of weeks. And now I have to face the reality that even if we get back to kind of normal life relatively soon, we are probably not going to be at large conventions with hundreds of people for a long time. And it remains to be seen just how long that's going to be. And so that's one of the things in my business that I've had to learn to accept so that I could then adapt effectively and create a new normal. So what is something in your life that you have to accept? After we're done acceptance, it's time for adaptation. Adaptation is where all the magic happens in resilience, right? If we just sit and accept and don't do anything else, we become passive victims. We don't want to do that, of course. We want to be strategic. We want to be effective. We want to be resilient. And so we need to adapt. By the way, if we don't adapt, this is what happens. Anybody play a cassette tape lately? I saw somebody mention vinyl in the chat earlier. Most of us are not playing cassettes. Some of us still play vinyl, but nobody's playing cassettes. Not a lot of people putting regular film in a camera anymore. And if you work for a newspaper today, I hope that your resume is ready. Right? Things are always changing. And if we are not willing or able to adapt effectively, then we are going to become irrelevant. And that shouldn't be a scary or bad thing. It should be prompting us to adapt sooner rather than later. To understand that those who adapt first have the advantage. Everybody's going to adapt. The question is just, will you be first or will you be last? And so as a coach right now, What are some things you need to do to adapt? If you're somebody that coaches face-to-face, you've had to adapt already. Hopefully figured out ways to do coaching like this or coaching over the phone. But what are some of the other ways that you're going to have to adapt to remain relevant in the months and years to come? What are some of the ways that your clients are going to have to adapt? And how can you help them to do that effectively? One of the ways that I adapted first was sitting in the hospital. I sat in that room and it was incredibly difficult. You're sitting in an 8x8 room. We've all seen a hospital room before. There was a little 8-inch TV and a hospital bed with bad sheets, and that was about it. And I realized pretty quickly that if I was going to be there for 2 weeks, 2 months, maybe 2 years, I needed to make some changes. And so we did things like put my bedspread and pillow on the hospital bed so that it felt more like a regular bed. We brought in my clothes so that I didn't have to wear one of those Johnny shirts. We brought in food so that I didn't have to eat the horrible hospital food. We did all of these things to make that environment more comfortable. After the transplant, there was a whole new series of adaptations, a whole laundry list of medications that I had to take, a new health regime to worry about, being very conscious about infection, which at a time like this is really challenging. But continuously adapting has helped me to not only survive, but to thrive through all of those things. I see people saying I need to adapt and learn new technical skills. Yeah, absolutely. Need to accept that I haven't been effective at managing my time. Absolutely. I think, who said that, Rosa? Yeah. Look, I think we're all struggling with that, especially now that we've moved into this kind of new world that we're all in. Some of us have moved from offices to home, and there are a lot of changes. Some of us are working from home with kids running around. My kids are running around upstairs right now, and my wife is thankfully helping to keep them calm so that I can do that. There are all kinds of adaptations we need to make. But as we do that, we can learn to become more effective. So I wanted to share a quick story with you. This is a picture of, whoops, went too fast. It's a picture of my wife and I. My wife and I met on a blind date that nearly didn't happen. Her best friend that I was working with set us up on this blind date. To say I was reluctant is not fair. I was terrified of going on this date. And the only thing that really made me go was, well, two things. One, I didn't really have any other options. I realized, where am I going to meet somebody? And I trusted my coworker. And so I said, you know what? I will go on this date. And we were supposed to go on a double date to Boston Pizza. And I arrived at the appointed time and day as I was instructed to do. And I walked in the front door and I'm looking around at all the small tables in the middle of the restaurant to find Janice with my coworker's name and her boyfriend and this friend of hers. I'm looking around everywhere and I don't see her anywhere. And then out of the corner of my eye, in one of those big booths in the back of the restaurant, I see a hand waving. And I look over and it's Janice and 12 other people. And I said, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm not going over there until I get more information because that looks like an ambush. And so I waited and Janice looked confused, but eventually came over, like, what's going on? And I said, who the heck are all those people over there? And she said, oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot to tell you, my friend's really shy and she wasn't sure about this whole blind date thing. So to convince her to come, I told her that she could bring some friends along for moral support. I hope that's okay. What? Like, where are my friends? Where's my backup team? And so I had to make this choice, right? This was not what I signed up for. This was not what I agreed to. This was not the plan. And now I had to decide, will I walk towards that or will I turn around and run? Running looked really attractive, but for whatever reason, I decided that I would go and explore and see what would happen. I had an incredibly awkward 2-hour dinner with 10 judges evaluating everything I said for the entire night and feeling incredibly self-conscious. But this is what happened. And then since then, we've added these 3 munchkins to our family. And I share those not just as a great excuse to show off my kids, although every parent likes to do that, but to help drive home the point of why adaptation matters. There are some incredible opportunities lying on the other side of what we're going through right now for all of us, if we're willing to walk through this, if we're willing to accept what's happened and adapt effectively to what's happened. then we can accomplish some incredible things and some incredible transformations can happen in our business. Now, to be sure, just doing this mental exercise is not enough. We have to do the adaptation to become more effective. And then we're going to have to pursue some new goals. And we'll talk about that in the second half. But it starts with this. It starts with accepting what we can't control so that we can focus on what we can. And what we can control is how can I adapt today, personally or professionally, to get closer to where I want to be. Yes, this is challenging. Yes, this is difficult, but it's supposed to be. Now, what can I do to take control? So, Shab, I think this is a good spot to break if that works for you.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And then we'll come back and do the second half.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Mark. So it's been really awesome so far. So how has it been so far, folks? Just show some love for Mark in the chat box. And Mark, can you kindly stop share so that we can bring folks online? Just, okay, awesome.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Okay, so thanks. It's been amazing so far. Wonderful, great, awesome, great insight, interesting story. So lots of great stuff here for you, Mark. Thanks for that. Okay, so we will take like 10 minutes. You can stop your video and take a bit of rest, and we will come back to you. Okay, so folks, it's been amazing so far. So I learned, first, we need to accept and let go. And second, we need to adapt. And I can't wait to hear the rest of Mark's insights. So as I shared with you in the agenda at the beginning of this session, I'm planning to do a bit of networking for like 10 minutes. So the way it works is that in order for us to get to know each other a bit, every session that I'll be hosting, in the middle of the session, I'll ask for 3 volunteers. Each of them, I'll grant them permission to start their video and audio. They will come on live, just like myself and Mark, and they get to share with all of us who they are, what they do, who they help, and why they are awesome. Just they can introduce themselves for 1 minute, like a professional networking session. But at least we get to know them. We can connect with them after this session. We can connect with them online, on LinkedIn, and we can follow up on a meaningful conversation. And now it's time for me to ask for 3 volunteers. So the way we're going to do it is that I'm going to ask you guys, those of you who want to introduce yourselves, this is a great opportunity. We have more than 100 people online right now. Just raise your hand if you're interested. Katie, amazing, Katie, the first one to put up her hand. Let me promote you to panelist. Katie, that's amazing. Thank you for volunteering. You're really brave. You're helping me out. Katie Ronaldo. So why don't you start your video and start your audio. Hello, hi Katie.
Hello. Hi everyone.
Okay, it's great to have you. 1 minute, go.
Sure, so my name is Katie Ronaldo, also Caitlin Ronaldo, whichever you prefer. I am an anxiety and stress management coach. So right now, most of us got both, if not at least one. I believe in an individual approach, so you won't get 5 tips from me, but you'll get 5 things that work for you, at least, and that's through coaching sessions one-on-one. So perpetual dreamers, I work with them a lot, and also perpetual doers. So hyperactive, always doing to the point of burnout, or the dreamers who have these great ideas but just can't seem to put them into actions. For sure, yeah, workaholics, definitely, Libby. So that's me in a nutshell. I enjoy being out in nature, so COVID has really supported that. Lots of outdoor projects have gotten done. And yeah, I just wish everyone a new, resilient world ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for being brave enough to put up your hand and introduce yourself to all of us. So why don't you, Katie, put your information in the chat box, sure, like your LinkedIn handle, so that the folks online can connect with you and follow up on a conversation with you. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, awesome. Fantastic. Just give me 1 second. Katie, I'm gonna put you back to attendee role. There you go. Okay, okay. Who's up next? So Katie, please put your LinkedIn handle in the chat box so that everyone online can reach you afterwards, okay? And make sure you address your, you put the comment in the chat box and address it to all panelists and attendees. So click on the 3 dots, address it to all panelists and attendees. Okay, Ava Redpath, that's amazing. Thank you guys for volunteering and stepping up to the plate. Ava, I'm promoting you to panelists. Start your video, start your audio. Take 1 minute, tell us who you are, what you do, who you serve. Hello.
I heard
1 minute.
Professional networking, but anyways, it's a predictable get up. I came from the world of health and fitness. I was always intuitively coaching my clients. I don't know that I was ever hired to transform anybody's body as much as I was their lives. So transitioning to a coach has been a very, very smooth and fulfilling journey. So I'm a coactive coach who specializes in helping people move through grief. And that all came to be after I experienced losing a sibling 7 years ago, and using my own resources and what I went through is how I'm holding space for my clients. And we all know that grief is a very universal term, so it may not necessarily refer to losing a family member. It could be grief in the type of way that we're feeling it right now. So I'm holding a very sacred space for my clients to work through that, because we all know that the only way out is through.
Now we know our own grief recovery specialist here. Ava, thanks for stepping up to the plate. So why don't you put your information in the chat box, your LinkedIn handle. Folks, connect with Ava. Let's follow up on this conversation. Thank you for volunteering.
Thank you to yourself as well. I appreciate it.
Thank you, take care. Okay, one more. Glenn, there you go. You're next. Get ready. Okay, Glenn. So Ava, put your information in the chat box. Folks, reach out to these wonderful people and connect with them. Let's get to know each other a bit, one person at a time. Glenn, welcome.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go, 1 minute.
Wonderful. My background, good night, everyone. My background is in career coaching. I've done that for many years, but I transitioned out of that into health and wellness. I was teaching at McMaster University and drafted into doing health and wellness coaching. So I facilitate a lot of education online and work with people to improve their workplaces. My focus now is mental health. 2 pieces, one, individual mental vitality and how to raise that, and how to create mentally winning workplaces. So I'm always looking to collaborate with coaches as I'm building around that focus. And as you know, COVID-19 has hit so many people and disrupted many businesses. So if you're interested, please reach out to me. I'd love to connect. I'm a great networker and love technology. So that's it,
amazing.
folks. Thank you and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's amazing. It's amazing to have all of these people with different specialties, working in different niches. So Glenn, please make sure you put your information in the chat box so that the folks online can connect with you. And now let's take like 2 minutes. All of you online, put your LinkedIn handle in the chat box. Let me show you what I mean. Just give me 1 second. I'll show you what I mean. So this is what I'd like you guys to do. Put your name, put your expertise, and your LinkedIn handle all in one line. One line. Take a look at the chat box. Take a look at the chat box. One line, one comment. Not 3 separate comments, just one comment. What's your name? What do you do? What's your expertise? Just a few words. And your LinkedIn handle. Put it in the chat box so that we can connect with each other after this session. we can expand our networks, and hopefully we will make time at least to get on a Zoom call with a few other people to get to know them. And hopefully over time, we can get to know more people, one person at a time, and we can build a thriving community of supportive people. So let's take 2 minutes, put your information in the chat box. I see tons of comments coming in. Glenn and Rose, Lisa, Mahesh, Jane, Francine, Claire, Barb, Libby, Ellen. It's amazing. Please make sure you put your LinkedIn handle in the chat box too. So your name, your expertise, and your LinkedIn handle, right? One person at a time. Let's take it one person at a time. Between now and our next meeting, if we can connect with one person and have a meaningful conversation with one fellow ICF Toronto member, or even members of other ICF chapters, we will build this community, I'm sure. We will make it stronger. We already have a community, we will make it even stronger. It's amazing. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for putting your information in the chat box, for supporting this initiative. So John, Jermaine, Vicky, Floyd, Joanne, 30 more seconds. Of course, you'll have time to put your information afterwards, but I don't want to keep Mark waiting for too long. So 30 more seconds, and then I'll hand over the mic to Mark. Yoo-hoo! It's amazing. Awesome. We have more than 100 people online. Hopefully we can connect with at least a few of them today. Awesome. Mark, are you there? Can we continue with your presentation?
Absolutely.
There you go. Thank you, my friend. Take it away.
So while we get this rolling again, there we go. And there. So while we get scrolling again, drop me a comment in the chat box and let me know what's one thing that you are going to take action on, because that's the next step in this process. What's something that you have learned? What's an idea that you've gotten? What's something that, whoops, let's go back here. It's advancing on its own. And that's okay, because I want to pull up the chat anyway. Perfect. There we go. Excellent. I see somebody asking about getting a copy of the chat box. I believe that actually is possible. I don't know. I'll leave that to have to deal with, but I believe that is possible to do.
Sure. Honestly, I need to check with the board
regarding
right. The privacy issues.
Privacy issues, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I just spoke about the technology. I hadn't even thought of that issue, so fair enough. So, great. Yeah, the notion of adapting being magic in the resilience process, absolutely true. Someone's saying, I'm going to renew my PCC. Excellent. So we've talked about acceptance. We've talked about adaptation. The next step in the process is the most critical. So this is sort of the intellectual part of the process, and it's important. But then it comes time to, okay, well, what are we going to do, right? Because doing the mental exercise in and of itself is not enough. And I realized that as I was sitting in that hospital room. So if I can bring you back to that environment again, and imagine you're sitting in this room, and it's now been months of waiting, months of every night being afraid to go to sleep because you're afraid your heart's going to stop. Every morning waking up hoping today will be the day that a donor is found. And day after day after day after day goes by. And then finally, after 6 months in that room, 10 months on that transplant list, you're sitting in your room watching TV at 10 o'clock at night like you do every night. And your nurse, Gail, comes to the door. Hey, there's a call for you at the nurse's station, she says. Now that's very strange. You've lived in this room for 6 months. You've never had a call at the nurse's station before because there's a phone by your bed. And so you know something is up, and you try to mentally and emotionally prepare in the minute it takes you to walk from your room to the nurse's station. And you walk into the nurse's station where there are 4 or 5 nurses gathered around the phone, and someone hands the receiver to you, and a stranger on the other end of the line says, I think we have a set of heart and lungs for you. And there's a long, awkward pause because how do you respond when someone gives you news like that? I believe I managed, thank you. This stranger explained that a donor had been identified, but that the final testing had not yet been done. There was still a chance, and I knew this because of past training, that the organs would not be usable. There was still a chance that this would be called off, that I would have what they called in the transplant world a false alarm. But at the same time, you have to prepare in case it is going to happen. And so you're in that kind of limbo state. And you walk back to your room and think, okay, what do I do next? There's about 6 hours between now and when this happens, if it's indeed going to happen. What do I do? First thing was to call family and friends. I called my mom first because she was the one staying with me in Toronto at that point. I dial the number, pick up the phone, and I say, Mom, I just got the call. I'm going to have my transplant. You need to come to the hospital right now. And I love my mother with all my heart, and she's an amazing human being. But I will never let her live down her response to that statement, because she responded with, are you serious? No, Mom, I thought it'd be super funny to pretend I was having life-saving surgery and then make you drive downtown. It's about a half-hour drive at 10:30 at night, and then say, gotcha, and play the best practical joke ever. Yeah, no, Mom, I'm pretty serious. If you would come down to the hospital, that would be really good. Thank you. And so my mom prepares and makes the drive downtown. I call family and friends back home in New Brunswick to tell them what's happening. Mom arrives. We hug, we cry, we pray together, and we wait. We wait and we wait for what amounted to about 7 hours. And it was really interesting because near the end of that time, I fell asleep. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? It's pretty counterintuitive in the most high-stress time. But I had had 10 months to accept. I had 10 months to adapt. And I had spent the last 6 months in that hospital thinking about where I was going to go next, which is the next step in this process. And I was as ready as you can be for a situation like that. And so I fell asleep. And finally, at 5 a.m., my mom shook me and woke me up because the doctors were at the door. And it was a moment like we've seen on TV. I'm laying on a stretcher and I look up. My mom is standing over me. She's looking down. And we're both trying to find the right words to say to each other because we know they might be the last words we say to each other. And all I can think to say is, Mom, I'm going to see you soon. And they wheeled me away. I'm told I was in surgery for 7 to 8 hours and then in the intensive care unit for 5 days. And I say that I'm told that because honestly, I remember very little from that period of time. Obviously, I was sedated for the entire surgery, but I was also heavily sedated in the ICU to prevent me from moving too much so that the wounds could heal, the incision could heal, etc. I still had chest tubes in my sides and we didn't want those to be moved around a lot. So I was very heavily sedated. In fact, I remember only bits and pieces of those 4 or 5 days. Most of those things that I remember didn't actually happen. There were flying elephants, there were bugs on the walls. I had some incredibly fascinating conversations with people who I later learned were not actually there. Morphine is a pretty interesting drug. But one thing I do remember is I woke up on the 3rd or 4th day, completely disoriented. Have you ever had an experience, maybe you were staying at a hotel or over at a friend's or family member's house, and you wake up and for a split second, you have no idea where you are? That ever happened to you before? So I wake up and it's like another planet. I mean, there are machines beeping and flashing. There are It's dark. There's no light anywhere. There are no clocks on the walls. I don't know if it's Monday or it's Friday, if it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. And then I ask somebody, like, what's going on? Where am I? And I move my mouth, but no sound comes out, which is an incredibly strange feeling to have. I wasn't aware at the time, but of course I had a ventilator tube in my throat to help my new lungs work, and it was blocking my vocal cords. I couldn't make sound. And as I was doing this and struggling to communicate, my mom realized what was happening. She came over and she calmed me down, explained, Mark, you can't talk, but I'll get you a piece of paper and a pencil so you can write whatever you're trying to say. And that way we can communicate together that way. And so I nodded my head to let her know that I understood. My mom reached in her purse and handed me the piece of paper and pencil and gave them to me. Very carefully, I wrote down the most important question on my mind at that moment. Mom, what time is it? Doesn't make any sense, right? There are probably 5 or 10 more intelligent questions to ask at that time, like, how am I doing? How did the surgery go? Something like that. But apparently I had an important meeting I had to get to. So I very carefully write this down and I hand my mom this piece of paper, and my mom takes the piece of paper from me and she stares at it for a long, long time. And I can't talk, right? But in my head, I'm thinking, why are you so stupid? Like, you're the person that taught me how to read. You're the person that taught me how to tell time. I know you have the skills required to answer this question. What is your problem? But I couldn't express any of that. And so my mom just kind of stared at this piece of paper and walked away. And it was only 4 or 5 days later when she came in to visit me, and we were having a conversation, and she handed me this piece of paper. I think I can show it to you. Let's see. Where did it go? There it is. And so looking at this piece of paper, you can understand why my mom had a bit of difficulty reading what I was trying to say. I think, in fairness, that's a pretty decent clock for somebody that's on morphine, but in any case. So that was the beginning of the recovery journey. And it was a very humble beginning, but it started there. It started by aiming at what I wanted to achieve. One of the secrets that I give to my clients and my customers, to people like you who say, how do you stay motivated? How do you make it through challenging times? How do you keep your spirits up? All of those things. And I say that one of the primary keys to doing that is to have a crystal clear vision of where you want to go. I'm talking to a bunch of coaches, you understand that. But secondarily, that vision has to matter to you at the highest level. You have to care about it. You have to want it so badly that you're willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes until you get there. If you can have a vision that means that much to you, then you will find the way to get it done. A lot of us get really caught up in the whats and the hows of the things we want to accomplish. And we don't spend enough time on the whys. Absolutely, we need to know what and we need to know how. Methodology is important, goals are important. But how do we actually execute day after day after day? We need to know why we're doing it. And if that why matters to you, then you'll figure it out. And so I had this vision that I was going to return not only to the state that I was at before the transplant, because that was still not great. I was sick. I was chronically ill. But I was going to return to a state even better than that. And so I had this vision. And it really came to me for the first time sitting in the ICU. And I remember sitting up for one of the first times in the ICU. And I could feel this strong, steady heartbeat in my chest. Somebody else's heart beating in my chest. And I thought, I wonder what's possible now. I wonder what's possible now, because with each beat is new possibility. And I have no idea where it came from. I just know that I had always had this vision of returning to not only my previous state, but to a better state of health. And for whatever reason, for me, a marathon represented that. And so I thought to myself, I wonder if I could run a marathon. Now, to put this in context for you, I'm going to give you, I could explain in several paragraphs the state that I was in, but this is a picture is worth 1,000 words kind of situation. So I'm going to find the picture for you here and show it to you. There it is. So as you can see, I'm incredibly thin. I weigh about 80 pounds. To give you some context, I'm about 125 pounds now and in pretty good shape. So certainly not overweight now. So I was incredibly underweight. I hadn't walked yet in 5 days. I had not run in 15 years. And that day I said, I think I'm going to go run a marathon. Now, does that make any logical sense? No. But the marathon wasn't really the point. The point was a compelling vision that got me excited and caused me to have the motivation to take the actions to recover. Because the journey from that bed to even functional human being was a long one. I remember going to the gym in the hospital to do mandatory rehab. We had to go 3 days a week. And I walked into the gym the first day and did curls with a pink 1 pound dumbbell, which, by the way, if you've got a male ego, is pretty hard the first day. Pretty hard to look tough and strong while you curl 1 pound pink dumbbells, but that's where I started. I got on the treadmill the first day and walked for 5 minutes. But each week I got a little stronger. On the last day of mandatory rehab, which was 3 months in, I jogged very slowly, but I jogged on the treadmill for 1 minute. That was a victory because the doctor said after this surgery, because of the impact on your abdomen, because of the impact on your rib cage, running will be incredibly painful. You probably just don't want to do that. Someone asking how old I was. I was 24 there. I know I look about 15, but I was 24 in that picture. And so on the treadmill, I jogged for the first time at 3 months. 6 months out, I ran my first 5K race. I celebrated my 26th birthday, a birthday I 2 years earlier didn't think I would see, by running my first half marathon. And 2.5 years from the date of that photo, I crossed the finish line of that first marathon. And it's really important to me that as I show those pictures, you understand why I do it. Because it's not about saying, look what I did and aren't I impressive? It's about reminding you, so that you can then again remind your clients, that part of being the best version of ourselves and part of being resilient is stretching our capacity. It's striving for better. It's not allowing ourselves to make excuses and to get stuck at the acceptance phase of this process. If all we do is accept, we become victims. We say, woe is me, life isn't fair. And there are a lot of people in that place right now. There are a lot of people who are thinking my life and my business look completely different than they did 6 months ago. It's not fair because I didn't do anything wrong and here I am. And if they stay in that mindset, that's where they'll stay. There are others, however, who have accepted that it's hard, who have faced the reality, and who have chosen to start to adapt, and who have a vision for a better future that they are excited about working towards. And those are the people who will find the drive and find the motivation to take consistent action over time, to make the small adjustments over time, to create the thriving business they want. And it may take longer than they plan, and it probably won't happen next week. But with that mindset, they will be able to achieve some things that they previously never imagined they could. And the people who are really sharp and innovative in new and creative ways because of the opportunities that we are being given right now will have businesses far beyond what they could have before. I mean, there are some people, I hope there are some of you on this call right now, who were thinking locally before. Maybe your coaching business was all in person. And so therefore your market was people who could drive to your office. And you haven't been able to see those people in person. And so hopefully you've pivoted and started to see people like this or done it on the phone. And you realize that, hey, I can market to anybody. I see somebody saying I was always global. Absolutely, why not? But if you weren't, let's do it. Now is the time. If you don't know the technology, spend some time learning the technology. It's not as hard as you might think. We are all capable of more than we give ourselves credit for. And as coaches, you know that because you tell your clients that, but do you remember it for yourself? I see a lot of coaches playing small. A lot of coaches playing small. And I want you to stretch and think a little bit bigger. And then finally, we get into action, which is obviously critical because if we don't do that, then nothing else happens. So can you take the leap? whatever that leap looks like for you. That might mean a new expansion in geography. It might mean a new modality so that you're using some of the technology. It might mean all kinds of different, it might mean a certification. It might mean, I don't know what it means. For me, it has meant shifting my business from live presentations in person to doing this. Next, it's going to involve pre-recording things and using multiple camera angles to pre-produce a 40-minute talk and then be able to do live Q&A and interaction afterwards. There are all kinds of interesting ways to pivot and to use what's happening right now to our advantage. But in order to do that, we have to be resilient. And that's what this framework is all about. One of the ways that I think coaches who are not already doing it can be resilient and can pivot during this time and can take advantage of what's going on right now is to be speaking. And so something I wanted to offer to all of you is the opportunity to incorporate that into your business if you're not already doing it. And you may say, well, now's the worst possible time to be a speaker. There are no live events. But you can do this, and you can do webinars, and maybe in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, however long it takes, you'll be able to do live events again. And I know of no better way to build my coaching practice than speaking. In fact, I do zero marketing for my coaching. I just speak. And then in my speaking somewhere, I mention some kind of offer or something that I'm doing, or I do a webinar, same thing. But I don't market myself as a coach per se, hardly at all. Why? Because if you have the what this modality does, what speaking and webinars do for you, is they give you 45 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, depending on the context, to demonstrate value, to give value, and then say, by the way, if you want more of this, here's a way you can get it. That's a much easier conversation than to have a typical exploratory call with a client, where it's important to do that too, don't get me wrong, right? We have to figure out what their challenges are and can I help, etc. But the confidence they have in you is up here versus down here, and there are far less objections to overcome if they know from the get-go that you can add value because you've had the opportunity to demonstrate it, right? And so if that is something that is interesting to you, just shoot me an email. I'm going to drop it in the, if I can, I'm going to stop sharing my screen actually so that I can find the chat box. There we go. And I'm going to do to all panelists and just drop my email here. All panelists and attendees. Whoops, there we go. And if you just send me an email if you're interested, and we'll jump on a call and have a conversation. There we go. About how to do that. So let me put that. Actually, let's just go to stop sharing. Let's do video now. So what I thought I would do, we have about, I think, 7 or 8 minutes left if I'm following my timer correctly, is do some Q&A stuff in the chat. So if you have a question of any kind, feel free to drop the question in the chat. And then what I'll ask you to do, if you're willing to, is actually come on the screen and we'll chat about it live. So whether it's a question about resilience, a question about the story, a question about coaching and speaking, whatever. If there's anything that I can do to add value, I'd love to be able to do that. Just drop a question there. And while we wait for people to do that, Shahab, I don't know if you have anything that you want to say, but
sure. I just wanted to thank you. It's been amazing. I learned a lot. Beautiful stories, inspiring stories, beautiful pictures, beautiful slides, an awesome presentation as was expected of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I acknowledge the fact that you took the time out of your day to give us this presentation. We're really thankful. So how was it, guys? Show some appreciation for Mark in the chat box. So I learned accept, adapt, act. So folks, show some appreciation, show some love for Mark in the chat box. Thank you, Mark, for that.
No, thank you. Listen, and you know, I'm practicing everything I taught you today by doing this, right? So understand that 2 months ago, I had done maybe 2 of these in my whole career. And then in the last 8 weeks, I've done dozens of them. And I would never in a million years, if you had offered me the opportunity to say, you can stop seeing people face to face and just do this, do it like, and listen, I want to get back to doing live events again. But I never would have thought that that it would work at all, period. And B, that it would be something that I would actually enjoy doing. And so all that to say that there are probably things in your business right now, and there are preconceived ideas that you have about how you work, that if you just experiment, and now is a great time to do it because we're all scrambling anyway, right? It's a great time to try some new things. One of my best business building tools, if you like, or strategies, I call it the spaghetti strategy, which is take some of your ideas, think of the couple that you think are the best, throw them at the wall and see what sticks, right? Some of them are going to fail and flop. That's part of the process. That's okay. But I'd rather have 4 ideas that, I'd rather try 4 things and 3 of them flop and find one good one than to sit and debate those 4 ideas for the next 3 years and not do anything about it, any of them. And far too often, that's what I see, not just coaches, business owners in general do, is they want to wait until it's perfect before they put it out to the world. And I'm a big believer that we fail forward, try and iterate and then try again and iterate. And that's how you get better. People ask me, how do you become a better speaker? And they want me to say, write your speech and then rewrite your speech and then edit your speech and then have somebody else edit your speech. You get better at speaking by speaking, which means you have to go up and be bad first before you can be okay, and then hopefully good, and then eventually really good. And so I just think that's the way we get better at business too.
Absolutely. So I just want to be mindful of time because we have another announcement to make, but I'd love for you to answer this one question before you go. Floyd is asking, how did you feel about the fact that in order for you to live, someone else had to die?
Probably the hardest part of the process. And thankfully, in my case, I had 10 months to process that, because some people who are very fortunate from a health perspective in the sense that they get listed and they're transplanted almost immediately don't have that processing time. The way that I framed it, right or wrongly, so that it worked for me, was that person, my donor, who unfortunately I know nothing about, was going to die regardless. That accident, whatever happened, whether there was somebody on the other end to receive those organs or not. Because I was there to receive those organs, and quite likely other people were as well. Usually a donor helps many people. Hopefully that's a little bit of hope, a little bit of joy, a little bit of peace in the minds and hearts of the family members who were left behind, that they know that despite their loss, something good has come from that. And that's my hope. Unfortunately, we wrote thank you notes to the families, and we hope that they got them, but we didn't hear it back from them. So we really don't know. But that's how I framed it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of framing it and looking at it, giving it meaning. So inspiring story. Thank you so much for that, Mark. Again, one last time before you go, if folks want to reach out to you, what's your email? Once again, put it in the chat box, please. If they want to refer you to their organizations so that their organizations hire you as a speaker, if they want to get your advice on becoming a professional speaker, whatever way, in whatever shape or form they want to reach out to you, what do? They shoot an email to Mark at
mark@markblack.ca is the easiest way, and you can reach me there for everything. But if you want to do the speaker part, just put speaker in the subject line so I know. But yeah, absolutely. If I can do something similar for your organization, I'm happy to do that as well. For the American friends, it's .ca, not .com, or it won't work. So thanks, everybody. I wish you all the best with your businesses, and if I can be helpful, just reach out and let me know.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and virtual hugs to you, my friend. Thank you. Take care.